The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with energy as representatives of countless alien species took their places. Each was more bizarre than the last, towering, multi-limbed beings, translucent entities with pulsating organs, and creatures that seemed to defy physical laws. At the center of this gathering sat James Thorne, the lone human delegate. His seat was smaller, less ornate, a visual representation of Earth's standing. Insignificant. James kept his face neutral, though his mind raced. It was his first time in the council, and the hostility in the air was almost palpable. Earth's invitation had been a formality, a box checked for diplomatic inclusivity. To the other species, humans were newcomers, barely out of their planetary cradle. A voice boomed from the podium, belonging to Sovereign Zylvan, the reptilian king of the Kryndaar Empire. His scales glimmered with an iridescent sheen as he addressed the assembly. "Honorable Council," he hissed, his tone dripping with feigned politeness. "I bring forth a matter of utmost importance, a gesture of diplomacy." The room grew quieter, though whispers persisted. Zylvan continued, "My youngest daughter, Rylka, has proven unsuitable for her duties in the Kryndaar court. I offer her to this council as a ward. Let her presence strengthen interstellar relations." James's brow furrowed. The murmurs of amusement among the council members grew louder. He could sense where this was headed. One delegate, a gelatinous creature from the Zixthon collective, burbled in its own language before its translator chimed in. "A fine opportunity for our human representative. Surely Earth would benefit from such a gesture." Laughter rippled across the chamber. James felt his cheeks flush but kept his composure. He glanced at Zylvan, who was suppressing a smirk. This was a setup. The Kryndaar king was offloading his problem onto the council, and they were all too happy to shove it onto the human, the easiest target. "I second the motion," a winged delegate chimed in, her voice laced with mockery. "Let the human accept this gracious offer." James stood, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor silencing the room. He adjusted his jacket, his expression unreadable. "On behalf of Earth," he began, his voice steady, "I accept." A stunned silence followed. Then, as if on cue, the chamber erupted in laughter. Zylvan's smirk grew wider, and the delegates exchanged amused glances. The human had fallen into their trap, just as they expected. But James's eyes betrayed no embarrassment, no regret. He stood tall amidst the ridicule, his gaze unwavering. He understood the game they were playing, but he also knew something they didn't. When the laughter subsided, he added, "Humanity has a history of turning challenges into opportunities. Let's see where this one takes us." The council erupted again, this time in a mix of laughter and derision. As James sat back down, his mind was already at work. The joke was on them for now, but jokes had a way of backfiring. James stood in the quiet quarters assigned to him, his gaze fixed on the tall, elegant figure before him. Princess Rylka was every bit as regal as one might expect of Kryndaar royalty. Her shimmering silver scales caught the light, and her piercing violet eyes scrutinized him with barely concealed disdain. She crossed her arms, her voice cold and sharp. "So, you're the human they've dumped me on. Tell me, do all of your kind have such small stature, or are you just the runt?" James smirked, unbothered by the jab. "Nice to meet you too, princess." I see sarcasm transcends species. Her lips curled into a faint sneer. "Let's get one thing clear. I'm not here because I want to be. My father found me inconvenient, and you? You're nothing more than a convenient escape for his embarrassment." "Well, aren't we off to a great start?" James replied, folding his arms. "Look, I didn't ask for this any more than you did. But since we're stuck with each other, how about we try to make it work? Or is sulking your primary skill?" Her glare could have melted steel. "Careful, human. You're already out of your depth." James chuckled, walking past her to the small table in the center of the room. "Funny thing about humans, we thrive in the deep end. Now, care for some tea? It's an Earth specialty." Rylka scoffed but followed him, curiosity flickering in her expression. "Tea? You're offering me water with leaves?" Exactly, James replied, pouring the steaming liquid into 2 cups. But it's not just any water with leaves. It's a symbol of hospitality. Something tells me you're not used to that. She took the cup reluctantly, sniffing it before taking a cautious sip. Her expression softened ever so slightly. It's not terrible. High praise, James said, grinning. So, tell me, princess, what's your story? How does a Kryndaar royal end up as galactic baggage? Her eyes narrowed, but after a moment, she sighed. I refused to play my father's games. The Kryndaar Empire values strength above all else, but their definition of strength is cruelty, dominance, and manipulation. I didn't fit the mold. Sounds like you've got more backbone than your father gives you credit for, James said. Her gaze met his, searching for mockery and finding none. You think defiance makes me strong? I think standing up for what you believe in, especially when it's unpopular, makes you stronger than most, James replied. Rylka seemed to consider his words, her posture relaxing slightly. You're strange, human. Your kind has no real power. Yet you speak as if you're invincible. Maybe because power isn't just about ships and armies, James said. Sometimes it's about seeing possibilities where others see problems. Like you. You're not baggage, princess. You're potential. For the first time, her lips twitched into a faint, almost reluctant smile. We'll see about that. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with anticipation as James and Rylka stepped forward. The delegates watched with smug amusement, convinced that the human had bitten off more than he could chew. Sovereign Sylvan sat among them, his scales gleaming with satisfaction. The Kryndaar king leaned back in his throne-like seat, fully expecting James to beg for relief from his so-called diplomatic burden. James stood confidently, hands clasped behind his back. Rylka, now dressed in a sleek ambassadorial uniform, walked beside him with a calm dignity that hadn't been there before. Whispers rippled through the chamber at her transformation, but the delegates quickly dismissed it as superficial. Ambassador Thorne, a towering insectoid delegate, called, her voice clicking with derision. It has been some time since you graciously accepted the Kryndaar princess. How fares your assignment? James smiled faintly. Quite well, actually. In fact, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Sovereign Sylvan for his generous gift. The king's smirk faltered slightly, but he maintained his composure. Generous, indeed. But surely, managing a Kryndaar royal has been challenging? James nodded thoughtfully. It was. First, Princess Rylka had to adjust to new expectations, as did I. But humans are nothing if not adaptable. I'm pleased to report that she's thriving under her new role. The chamber broke into murmurs of surprise, and Sylvan's eyes narrowed. A new role. James gestured toward Rylka, who stepped forward with poise. With her permission, I registered Princess Rylka as an independent ambassador to the Galactic Council under Earth sponsorship. According to Interstellar law, she is no longer beholden to the Kryndaar Empire. The room erupted in gasps and hushed conversations. Sylvan rose from his seat, his voice a low growl. You overstep, human. She is Kryndaar by blood and bound by our customs. This is an affront to our sovereignty. James raised a hand, unfazed. Actually, sovereign interstellar law is quite clear. Once registered with the Council, ambassadors are granted diplomatic immunity and autonomy from their home governments. I simply facilitated the process. The delegates leaned in, their curiosity piqued. The insectoid delegate clicked again. And what does the princess have to say about this? Rylka met her father's gaze with a steeliness that silenced the room. I say that I am no longer my father's pawn. For too long, I was treated as a problem to be discarded. But under Earth's guidance, I have found my voice. I will use it to advocate for principles that matter: justice, fairness, and cooperation. Her words carried a weight that silenced even the most skeptical delegates. Sylvan's tail lashed angrily, but he knew he was trapped. Interstellar law was unyielding, and the human had played the game perfectly. James turned to the council, his voice steady and firm. Earth may be new to the interstellar stage, but we bring something unique. The belief that individuals, no matter their origin, have value. Princess Rylka embodies that belief. And in supporting her, we support the principles this council claims to uphold. A few delegates exchanged glances, their amusement fading into something closer to respect. James stepped back, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of energy coursing through the chamber walls. After the council session, James and Rylka walked through the corridors of the Galactic Assembly building, their steps measured but purposeful. Rylka's presence, once dismissed as a burden, now drew curious glances from passing delegates. The mockery that had followed James seemed to have shifted into quiet admiration, or at least grudging respect. "You did well in there," James said, his tone casual but sincere. Rylka glanced at him, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "I spoke my truth." The response was unexpected. James shrugged. Truth tends to have that effect, especially when people are used to lies. Before she could respond, Sovereign Zylvan emerged from the shadows, flanked by two hulking Kryndaar guards. His expression was as cold as the steel-plated floor beneath their feet. "Impressive theatrics," Zylvan hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "But don't mistake temporary applause for lasting success. You've made a powerful enemy today, human." James met his gaze without flinching. "Your definition of power is what got you here, Sovereign. You underestimated your daughter, and you underestimated me. That's on you." Zylvan's tail swayed ominously behind him. "You think a few words can change the galaxy? You've merely delayed the inevitable. Rylka is still Kryndaar, no matter what laws you twist." Rylka stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I am Kryndaar, but I am no longer your pawn. I will not stand by while you dismantle everything our people could become in pursuit of your twisted version of strength." The Sovereign's gaze flicked to her, his anger barely contained. "You think you can survive without the Empire's protection? You think this human can shield you?" James smirked, stepping up beside her. "She doesn't need shielding. What she needs and what she has is the chance to carve her own path. That's something no empire, no king, can take away." Zylvan's lip curled in disdain, but before he could respond, a delegate approached, interrupting the confrontation. The being, a wiry creature with shimmering blue skin, inclined its head toward Rylka. "Princess, your words today resonated with many of us. If you ever require allies, the Sarvix Consortium would be honored to assist you." The Sovereign's eyes narrowed as the delegate departed, the implication clear. Rylka's independence was already gaining traction, threatening his influence. "You're playing a dangerous game," Zylvan muttered, his voice low and venomous. James leaned in slightly, his tone calm but firm. "Humans are good at games. The trick is knowing when to change the rules." Zylvan glared at him before turning and stalking away, his guards following closely. Rylka exhaled, tension leaving her shoulders. "He won't give up easily." "Good," James said. "It means we're doing something right." As they continued walking, Rylka glanced at him, a small, genuine smile breaking through her usual guarded demeanor. "You're an odd species, James Thorne. But perhaps oddity is exactly what this galaxy needs." James grinned. "Welcome to humanity's way of doing things. Messy, stubborn, and impossible to ignore." For the first time in a long while, Rylka felt something unfamiliar but welcome, hope. Together, they stepped into the unknown, ready to challenge a galaxy that had underestimated them both.